Welcome to Made for Mondays, the source for digging a little deeper into the Believers Church Sunday messages and finding ways to apply them to our daily lives. Together, let's take a deeper look and find a way to bring Mondays back to life.
Hey everybody, welcome to the pod. My name is Heather, and who are you fellas?
Hey there, Pastor Heather. It's me, Jamie.
Hey Jamie.
It's me, Doug.
Hi Doug.
Hey, Doug. Hey, Jamie. Heather. I'm Joe.
Hi guys.
Nice to be with you guys this morning.
Good to be with everybody.
Yeah.
Joey, do you want to tell us about the weather forecast for this week?
Yes, I had heard it was supposed to be a pretty nasty week we got coming, so enjoy the weather this morning.
Okay.
Because we got the outskirts of that nor'easter that was happening down south is going to hit us a little bit this week and rain most of the week.
Maybe we could.
Our listeners, thank you for the.
I was going to say, maybe we could put like a nice
start.
big map here.
We definitely should start
And then
that.
Joey could start to
love
give
that.
us a weather report.
I was just telling you, it's like the first thing I check in the mornings now is the weather.
Yeah,
Like a green screen right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
that really would be good.
Joe could be our weatherman.
Jeremy's going to work on that.
Yeah.
Knowledge is king, right?
Yeah.
So, weather question. How old were you guys when you realized it was nor'easter and not like nor'eastern, or nor'eastern and not nor'easter?
I don't know if I knew that. What did I just say?
Like, did you think it was Easter the holiday?
Like, somewhat recently, I thought it was attached to like Easter. Like, oh, it happens around this time of the year. So, this is a Easter storm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not with you, Doug. I don't
Yeah.
think I ever tied it to that.
You guys have known this for quite a long
Yeah.
time.
Sorry for not letting you know.
I love learning new things.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I can bring that to the table today.
That's
It's not
great.
necessarily attached to Easter.
Nope.
Okay.
No,
It
it's
doesn't
not.
have to be.
Nope.
Yep.
Yeah, they happen mostly in the fall, right?
As how little I paid attention
I
growing
mean,
up.
that's Joe.
I think they're
Joe's
just a smaller version of a hurricane, which the hurricanes are fall season.
Right.
I
Yeah.
don't. Now I'm getting.
Yeah, maybe it
I
is.
think you're in
attached
over
to
your
Easter.
head.
I don't
You're
know.
making up stuff.
I'm going to text Brian Noble. Ask him.
Okay. Yeah, Joe, you need to start doing some studying if we're going
Okay.
to be
Yeah, we
happy
got
to
the
be our
map coming.
weatherman.
What's
Yeah.
your weatherman name? It can't be Joe
I
Powell.
don't know.
It has to be something like Joe Storm or something like that. That'd be awesome.
You have to say it like that.
Yeah.
Joe Storm.
Joe Storm with the weather report.
Oh,
Yeah.
that sounds
Okay.
good. I would
Yeah.
trust that name.
Did we start recording?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just making sure because this conversation is already.
All right, guys.
Did we start?
We'll fix it.
I
Joe
greeted
Storm.
everyone.
Yeah.
You introduced yourself.
And then we started talking Joe Storm. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. What did you guys do this weekend? Anything fun?
Ransom had his first soccer game on Saturday, and it was really
fun.
fun. They did really well. Yeah, so he played soccer when he was much younger, and then took a few years off, and he's been trying to find his thing, whether it was karate for a while, and now back into soccer, and he did so well, and he had a really good time playing.
Good. Nice.
And he's on a team with his best friend Trey, so they're playing soccer together.
Nice.
It's great.
What's the team name?
Oh, the Storm, Suffolk
What?
Storm.
Oh, get out
Oh,
of here.
Not even
stop
kidding.
it.
It's amazing, yeah.
Full circle.
So their
Wow.
jersey is gray, and they're thinking of a team name, and somebody said charcoal, and they're like, I don't know about the charcoal.
The
That doesn't
charcoals?
yeah, the charcoals. And then somebody said storm because it's like gray clouds,
Yeah.
and we're like, oh yeah, no, that kind of works, and that was better than all of the other like
they
skibbity
don't-
toilet, and we're like,
Right.
no, it can't be that.
So they don't give the teams, like, they don't assign teams with names?
No,
Jamie, we have to be inclusive of the children's
Oh,
thoughts.
I mean, I
Yeah.
just didn't know that was a thing.
The-
like
the
when I was a
team
kid, they
name.
handed you a shirt with the name of the team on it.
Oh no, they have jerseys with numbers, but the team
Oh.
name was technically the coach's last name. But then he let us pick a more fun name than just
Wait,
his last
what?
name.
It's the coach's last name?
Yeah, it was like team this, and
Until
then
you
he was
picked-
like,
Now
let's
that's
come
weird.
up with a name. So
Okay.
it's much better.
What if two teams have the same name?
Oh, it's just storm versus storm. Who's the bigger storm, right?
Perfect storm.
Oh, the perfect
Ah,
storm.
the
That's so
perfect
good.
storm.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
Wild.
I realized too. My son is an advocate for justice. There was another kid on the other team that was running full sprint down the field and just had no idea how fast he was going and ran right into Ransom's friend, knocking him down, and he went flying across the field. And Ransom watched it. I'm watching this happen. I look at him, and he's watching this take place. The very next play, he seeks out that big kid on another team and slide tackles him.
Wow.
And then the kid eats it, and then he's like, hey, are you okay, buddy? And I'm like, no, I know what you're doing. Stop this right now. We can't, this is not how we play soccer. So now we have to teach him, like, yeah, let the ref handle the justice. You're not out there, trying to make sure people pay for what they did. Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
That's good. He's following in your footsteps.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Peace.
I mean, not yes, that, but also
Let's get
with
everybody.
soccer.
Oh yeah,
We're
soccer.
into soccer.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's good.
it's very fun.
We had our first baseball game this weekend too. They did give us our jersey with our name. We're the
Well,
Braves.
I mean,
I had
why
no say in
wouldn't
that.
you?
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't make any sense
Yeah.
to do it the other
I,
way.
I had no say in it.
Yeah, I mean,
The Western Branch League has sponsors this year for Coach Pitch Age. So I got the jersey. I was like, oh, Dave's Hot Chicken. All right.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, the new one's
that's
coming.
awesome.
I'm excited about it.
I'm so
Oh, where
never had
is
it.
it? Where's it
It's
opening?
in the old KFC on Portsmouth Boulevard.
Finally,
Finally,
something's
something's going in there.
there.
The building's looking
It
fantastic.
does.
Oh,
Nice
that's
little mural on the
awesome.
side.
Cannot wait to get it.
it's just like really cool graffiti.
Yeah.
mural that says
Cool.
Yeah.
Chesapeake.
I like
it's
hardly
amazing.
ever come over that way anymore. So that's
Nice.
awesome.
To have luncheon as soon as it opens.
I can't
Yeah,
wait.
Lush,
Yeah,
yeah,
that'll be
another
great.
Mount Rushmore. Bring it back.
Nice.
Yeah.
So how'd Easton do?
He did great. Yeah, it's the first time I'm pitching to them. So
Oh, so
that
you're
was-
coaching? Doug, you're not coaching?
I'm an assistant coach.
Okay.
So I run around and I look like I know what I'm doing, but I have no idea any of
Yeah.
the rules of soccer. So yeah,
Yes,
it's
you
fun.
do.
No, weird rules, but like even then, I'm learning as I go.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to tell the kids the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So your team is Dave's Hot Chicken?
No, it's the Braves. We're sponsored. Got a little logo on the back.
I was going to say, that's awesome.
That's a great
That's amazing.
I would love that. And how appropriate would that be?
Right.
Yeah.
Joe's team is named after a fast food joint.
I love it.
Jamie, do you remember when I decided to be a team mom?
Yes, that was a terrible decision.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That was one of the dumbest moves of my life.
Yeah.
For T-ball? Or
I think it was when one
don't
of
even
my
remember she blacked
no,
out.
It was, yeah, seriously. And I came into the office and I was like, Jamie, I don't know what happened. I was at this meeting. I think it was when Spencer was playing.
You felt pressured.
And I was like, I just signed up to be the team mom. And he was like, what?
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know. I'm the
Yeah,
team
I'm sure
mom.
you-
all of
I'm
a
sure you
sudden.
were terrible at
I
it.
was horrible at it.
Yeah.
Horrible.
She never brought an orange.
I know. It's like, what do you? Is it just snacks every week, or what does that look like?
Yeah, it's like organizing people to be in the concession
Yep.
booth,
Oh,
to
man.
bring snacks.
Well, that part you would be really good at.
no, I mean, yeah, but I'm too bossy for those things.
You're a little bossy.
I'm
I'm not gonna lie.
my team mom was in the dugout the whole time, set them down in order in the batting order, made sure
Really?
they got their
Yeah.
helmets. I didn't have to do any of that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's solid.
That's amazing. So our coach, we kind of like threw it out there for all the families to help. And the family that brought snacks, week number 1, raised the bar so very
Oh,
high.
yeah.
Oh, see,
They had
yeah.
individually wrapped bags
Yeah.
and oranges, and each orange had a smiley face on it. I was like, yo, parent for week number 2,
Yeah.
you got your work cut out for
Right.
you. It's going to be real tough.
That's funny.
I know. That's when like moms start getting like Pinterest
Yeah.
happy,
Yep.
and then they feel super pressured. The
Yeah.
moms that can't pull that off, and
I've had B groups like that where
Yeah.
you know the first person that brings food, and it's pretty awesome actually. I'm not gonna lie, sets the tone for like you're gonna you just know the rest of the semester we're feasting. It's gonna be incredible.
But yeah, if the first week is like packaged cookies
Yeah,
and crackers
low bar.
and cheese,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
this B group's gonna
right.
snacks aren't gonna be great.
That's not gonna. You know, you don't. I've done groups where there's
You
no
never
snack.
have
Yeah, I'm like,
food
I don't,
because
if you
you
want
don't
food, bring it. I'm not wasting my time with the
Have you ever had
logistics
somebody
of that.
walk in with like a Chick-fil-A bag? Like, this is my meal.
Yeah, it's just the way it is.
Not
funny.
sharing.
Oh yeah, right.
Everyone gets a nugget.
right.
I wasn't prepared for others.
That's how Dougie would show up because he like brings a pizza for 25
Yeah.
kids.
Did you order food? Oh yeah, I got
larger
it.
group
A
than I
pizza
expected.
shows up.
Just cut the slices really thin.
Right.
That's what we do for like kids' birthday
Perfect.
parties. So
Yeah.
a fourth of a slice. That's all
Right.
I
Yeah.
need.
Super good.
Jamie, did you do anything fun this weekend?
Mostly church related stuff. Turned the apartment over, but we did have the kids over for dinner last night and played games, and it was a lot of fun. Esther came over and tore the place up, and yeah, it was super fun.
Nice.
Yep.
We had my cousin and her husband were visiting from Wisconsin this weekend. So we went up to Williamsburg one day and did all the Williamsburg things. Then we went down to Virginia Beach one day and did a bunch of Virginia Beach things. So we were being
You were a tourist.
tourists
Yeah.
all
Yeah,
weekend,
nice.
but
From
it was
7
fun.
cities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Try to do all the
cool.
things. My mom's taking them. Well, My mom was hoping to take them to the Wisconsin today, but as of Labor Day, no, but as of Labor Day,
it's that time of the
they're
year,
closed on Mondays.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, oh man, we just missed it. We should have reversed and done that, I guess, over the weekend. I was not on my planning game.
A fascinating
apparently.
little nugget about your cousin's trip here.
Yes.
You told me she forgot her cell phone
She did.
in Wisconsin.
Yes.
Not on the Wisconsin.
Not on the Wisconsin.
In Wisconsin.
So
Right.
just the entire trip.
Yes.
No phone. I was
Her
like,
husband Matt texted Nate and me like on Friday on their way here. Wait, I think they got here Thursday. Anyways, he texted and was like, hey, this is Matt. Karen left her phone at home. And I was like, oh my gosh. So they live in Wisconsin, but the closest airport is Minneapolis. So he was like, you know, we're on our way. And I was like, okay. So when they got here, I was like, so how did you, I was trying to figure out how we would have gotten our numbers. And I was thinking, I bet he went on to like Facebook, found my mom, messaged my mom, got our numbers, whatever. He was like, no, he texted their daughter, and then she went back to their house and screenshotted our numbers off of Karen's phone, sent them to Matt, all this stuff.
Well, there's someone who's not tethered to their phone.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's good.
Must be nice.
She didn't even really, she said she didn't even realize it until they were like pretty much at the airport, and she was like, well, I don't have my phone.
Probably just poor cell coverage in Wisconsin. You know, just don't need it much.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, sounds like everyone had a great weekend.
Yeah.
And now we are started the week with our Bible reading challenge, and we had 2 very long chapters to read. Luke 21 and 22.
Right.
Did anything stand out to you guys?
So to me, the first thing that stood out was the first couple verses, which ties in really nicely to the message itself, which is the widow's mite, where Jesus and the disciples are watching the offering, which would be a very intimidating move. Bringing up your offering in front of Jesus, that'd be a little intimidating. So, the Pharisee comes up, or some rich person comes up and drops a big offering in the plate. And then the widow comes and drops a couple pennies in, and Jesus remarks that this woman, her gift is very pleasing to God, even though it was very little, because it represented genuine sacrifice on her part. That passage just always gets me.
Yeah.
And I think it's not you could do it in a guilt-driven way, but I think, just reflecting on when you give, what does Jesus think of the spirit in which I'm giving? I mean, clearly he evaluates that, so that's just a good exercise.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, it's like a heart check.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, in that moment.
Yep.
Like reading
the Bible day.
I don't know, right? So
I need a good Bible.
I know, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
There's a good one.
Yeah.
So yeah, Luke 21 is a really difficult chapter. A lot of it is talking when Jesus is talking about, coming back.
Yeah.
And it's weird because some of it looks like it's tied directly to like the temple being destroyed, but some of it might be overlap of like him coming again, like the second coming. And it's always been difficult for me to read that and to try to figure out like how much of this is he talking about for them right then and there? How much of it is foreshadowing events to come that haven't happened yet? So just like reading through it this morning and just being prayerful to, just to let God speak through that and try to bring clarity in some way. I don't know.
I know. It can be so confusing because he's talking about like this stuff will happen in this generation, and you're reading it like, well, what? How can that be when we're several generations from then, and it feels like it hasn't happened. So it can be.
I'm reading a book right now by John Eldridge, Moving Mountains on prayer. It's so good, very challenging, but he talks a little bit about not necessarily that passage, but just the idea of like the kingdom coming and then the progressive nature of the taking of the kingdom, and he kind of compared it. He made a metaphor of like World War II in the Pacific, when the war was won, and yet in the Philippines, they still had to island by island finish the job, basically.
Yeah.
And so like the kingdom has come, but then there's this progressive nature of establishing the kingdom.
Oh, yeah.
It was just very interesting. But the book on prayer, John Eldredge is a little bit more on the charismatic side, but still, it's such a thought-provoking. It's a book that I'm going to put on the I recommend list.
Oh, that's cool.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love how you recommend books, but if you haven't read it, like how do you put it?
Yeah,
Cautiously recommend or something?
Yeah, I'll recommend, but with caution or
Oh, yeah,
reservation.
that's
or-
always good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this one I fully endorse. It's
That's
really
awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought the same in the reading, and thought just because we tend to dive into those and use these real life examples in our culture of Jesus is about to come back now. Like I can feel it. He says right here, wars will be happening. That's what's happening. All that. Jamie likes to say, each generation likes to say it's always the worst, right?
Yes.
It's never been as bad as it is right now.
Never.
And so in reading that, I liked how he opened it up when he first replied, said, kind of just a reminder to us, watch out that you are not deceived, for many will come in my name claiming I am he. The time is near. Do not follow them.
Yeah.
So just a good reminder in
Yep.
the midst of all the chaos when we're trying to figure out the exact day and time, even though he says we will not know the exact day and time.
Yeah.
Yep.
A reminder, don't get caught up in that
Yeah.
too much.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah, and I think that's the way we're supposed to read it. Like even like Revelation, like it happened to them. Like it was written to their generation. So it's not like Jesus is writing something for like America in 2024. Like
What?
this is waiting to happen for us. Like it happened to their generation, but every generation reads it as if it's written to them as well. So it happened way back then, but it's happening to us right now also.
Yeah.
And there's
Yeah.
like a really good both and kind
Yeah.
of approach to that,
Yeah.
which is really confusing, but I think really healthy in reading it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it makes sense of it a bit more
Right.
in my mind, at least.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
And then in chapter 22, I mean, I just can't get through that chapter without boo-hooing
Yeah.
through the whole thing. Nate and I read it together, and I was reading through it, and I got mostly through it, but I just actually like trying to put, as we have been going through this, I've been really trying to be intentional about putting myself into these scenes, not just like reading through the passages to like get through our reading, but to be like, what would I feel like if I was in this scene with Jesus or in these stories, and try to put myself in the different characters. Because as we've talked about, as we've gone through our challenge, as we've been, I think even through messages and stuff on stage, we've been trying to get people to like not just identify how we tend to identify with the biblical stories, but like put yourself in the role of the Pharisee, put yourself in the role of these different people, right? So I think as I've been trying to be more mindful of that, as we've been doing the reading challenge, the emotion that comes from that, especially as we hit this part of Jesus' story when he's arrested and we just know what's coming, and then just Peter and just that part of his story and denying Christ, like how that must have felt for him being confronted with that, like just being so confident that no, Lord, I would die for you. And then the Lord telling him, like, you're going to deny me, Peter, and the rooster's going to crow. And then hearing that rooster crow and just feeling like, I mean, everything had to crumble for him, and just feeling the weight of that would just, it gets me.
It does.
It gets me every time reading through that part of scripture. So, two very powerful, packed chapters this week that'll be really good to be digging into deeper as we go through the week. So thanks for sharing your thoughts on that. And really excited to talk about this week's message because it was also a very packed message, even though we were supposed to be getting rid of stuff. So you open the message sharing some stats and stuff from this University of Notre Dame research that they've been doing on the science of generosity.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting.
It is super interesting.
That they're doing this. And it was crazy to hear what all they're finding. And I really loved how you pointed out their level of generosity.
Yeah, their baseline
Yeah.
of what they consider to be generous is 10%.
Yeah.
Giving away 10%.
Which is, wow, shockingly biblical.
It's just, it is kind of astonishing.
Yeah.
And you wonder, like, I don't know, I didn't dig enough through the website to find out, like, how did they determine 10%? But through their research, they determined, even though 97%, only 3% of Americans do that, they still have established
That's still
that
their
as the
bar.
baseline.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting. You'd think that they would take, like, what's the median amount, and then that's the baseline, but that's not what they do.
Right.
Only 3% give away 10% or more. That's the baseline.
I wonder if that's because that's the level in which they saw people experience joy or
one would think that there's got to be some
something.
correlation because
Yeah.
it's research oriented. So they must have found that there was a threshold that giving made a difference in the life of the person who was giving.
Yeah.
Because that's what the research found, that they were happier, had a greater sense of purpose, they lived healthier lives,
Yeah.
so forth.
Which
Yeah.
that would tie to the biblical principle,
It
right?
would. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so
Or 10%.
cool. Yeah. Jamie, relax.
Is Lee in the room?
So I just wanted to like take a second and just talk about like because you mentioned it in the message, but what are some of the ways that our community and global partners would be affected if everyone who called Believers Church their home would tithe? Because we don't say that from stage because that does sound a little like attacky.
It does.
But
But
it
it's
is
like a
something
little-
that's
it's-
really cool to
yeah.
think about.
It's
because,
also like a little vision enlarging. You know,
Yeah.
like think about if our church budget wasn't $2.5 million, but it was $7.5 million. We wouldn't have more people here.
Right.
So we wouldn't necessarily like that wouldn't get eaten up with staff or, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
It would just be, we'd be able to do so much more.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to even imagine, honestly, but like our local partners, instead of like just getting by, would be, I mean, they
Fully
would
funded.
fully funded and thriving, like fully able to attack their mission. Instead of planting a church, you know, like every 5 years in France, we could have global partners where every single year a new church is being established somewhere, you know. Like that'd be pretty incredible. With that kind of budget, we could have a community center with after-school mentoring and tutoring programs that help those kids who are on the margins of our own community. Like it would just be almost limitless what you could pull off, you know. It'd be amazing.
I know. We could like help to like fully fund what Oasis is doing with the homeless and population over in Portsmouth. I mean, it would be
remarkable.
So incredible to be a part of something like that. Yeah. So exciting. So Jamie, you continued with more stats and basically boiled it all down to the fact that we collectively have a stuff problem.
We do.
Yes. So how many Americans have less than $2,000 in savings?
72% of Americans, so nearly 3 out of 4, don't have the capacity to absorb a $2,000 emergency. And 8 out of every 10 of us are living just paycheck to paycheck, just scraping by. And what's really interesting about that one is it almost doesn't matter how much money a person is making. There are people making $500,000 who are living paycheck to paycheck. So like, it's really not a income problem. It is a stuff problem or a money management problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned it too, like how does today's economy factor into that financial state? Because it does factor,
It
but
certainly factors. So like, yeah, I didn't want to like just totally make light of it. Like what's going on? Is it because eggs are so expensive? Because that's what, you know, you talk, if you listen to people talking, that's what they're telling you. but it can't be just that.
Yeah.
We're not eating that many eggs that our savings has been depleted.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just don't like the cost of things is going up. The wages are also going up though. Like wages last month went up 3.5%. So maybe not as fast as inflation, but they are going up. So we just don't have the margin to absorb in if the cost of gas spikes, no one has margin to absorb that spike. If the cost of whatever's going up, because we are living at the max, we just don't have the capacity to absorb any shift or change. And the reality is economies fluctuate. They go up and down. And so you have to have built into how you live margin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you did a great job at that perspective. It's a unique perspective on generosity with stuff and how much stuff we have. And talking about the margin, like you said, what a great example, like walking us through not just the truck payment, but then the storage unit thing. I never even thought of that.
Right.
There are so many storage units around. They're popping up everywhere.
Every time I see a new construction thing, I'm like, oh, that's going to be great. I wonder what's coming. And then it's like another storage unit.
Yeah.
Which is so weird. There has to be like research out there showing like these younger families moving to our area are bringing a lot of stuff with them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a huge need there. So they're all overloaded and maxed out.
So I thought it's fair to mention the economy. Obviously, it's a real problem.
It's legit.
Yeah, but the margin thing it rings true. It's so true.
Yep.
Yeah, we always talk about how, like, I don't know if it's Gaffigan, but there's someone who does a bit about their stuff and even like food, like Americans, just like with food and like how we eat, and we have like 3 meals and then what's like the dessert and like the courses and all this stuff. But then like Nate and I talk about it a lot with like the storage unit stuff. Like, how would you explain that to like a third world country or something? Like,
what's that for?
What's that for? Oh, that's for the stuff that I never even like use.
Yeah, it's for the stuff that I
can't put in my like 2,000 square foot house
can't fit it.
or whatever. Like I got to put it in this other space that I also rent and pay for.
Right.
Like, oh, just because you're like moving and don't have a space for it. No. I pay for this like all
every
of
month.
the time.
Yeah.
It's a long-term
Just to
rental.
have, and like, there's like definitely like you had a space for Uncle Eddie's stuff before just
free
as
market.
a transition thing or whatever.
Yeah.
But so many of us have these things that are just part of space that we use all the time.
So when I was a used car salesman back in the day, very classically, we were in a mobile home trailer kind of thing. That's where our office was. And we shared an office with a storage unit place that used to be a Kmart. And they built a drive-through so you could drive into this thing, and that's where all the storage units were. It was very interesting.
Oh, wow.
But even back then, now there's TV shows about it, but even back then, people would put their stuff in storage and they would leave it there. They couldn't afford the rent. So after a certain amount of time, their unit gets confiscated, and like a Saturday a month, every month, they would auction off all the storage stuff.
Listen, I love those shows.
People didn't pay for it. So that was 30 years ago that was going on. Like, that's a relatively recent show, but yeah, that's been a thing ever since there were storage units.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So people have all this stuff, and rather than give it away or sell it or do whatever with it, there literally are people putting it into storage who can't afford to keep it in storage.
And just forget.
Yeah.
It's just crazy to me.
Right.
Yeah.
So you kind of moved us from kind of the state that we're in, just like this is our condition, kind of. And then you walked us through this passage in Matthew.
Yeah.
So can you talk us through that a little bit, and then we can kind of interject some thoughts on that story?
I mean, the story's pretty straightforward. There's this guy comes to Jesus. He wants to know, what do I need to do to have eternal life? And Jesus says, you have to keep, like, if you want to earn your way to heaven, you got to keep the commandments. You got to never violate a commandment. That's basically what he says. And the guy's like, well, which ones? And so Jesus rattles off 4 of the 10 commandments, and then he adds, and love your neighbor as yourself. And this guy is like, oh, yeah, totally. I've done that. And perfectly, he's done that. And so Jesus kind of gets to the heart of the matter and says, oh, so you've perfectly loved your neighbor as yourself? Then sell everything you have, give it to the poor, your neighbors, and then come and follow me. And the guy walks away sad because he has a lot of possessions, is what it says. So he walks away sad because he loves his stuff more than he loves his neighbor, it turns out.
Yeah.
And that's really what Jesus calls him on. You don't love your neighbor as yourself because you are unwilling to let go of your stuff to help your neighbor. So you actually love your stuff more than you love your neighbor.
Yeah.
That's the punchline of the story.
Yeah. I think what I love about that passage is Jesus shows us yet again that in conversation, he knows our hearts.
Yeah.
Right? He knows, like earlier I brought up my favorite part of this chapter of Luke was his first response. Well, in this case, Jesus knows this man's heart and knows exactly what, is coming and chooses to give him a vague answer at first because he knows, I know what this guy's about to, I know his heart, and his heart says that he's doing all the things right. And then I'm giving him.
Yeah. And the reality is, like, he probably is doing a lot right. He's not committing adultery. He's not lying. He's not, he's honoring his mother and father. He's doing all of these things. He might even be really kind to his neighbor. But he's not loving his neighbor as himself, know? And so Jesus is able to discern that and lead him to that place where he realizes, I'm not perfectly fulfilling the law.
Yep.
Yeah, I also liked how you contrasted it with a couple other passages, including the passage from Matthew 16, because I think, sometimes we put ourselves in that position. Like, is Jesus really wanting us to, like, leave everything and sell everything and do these things?
Yeah.
And so you did say, like, Jesus doesn't want to be added to your life. He wants to take over your life.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what Jesus is getting at there. Like, he doesn't just want to be this additive.
Yeah.
When we say our mission is to make Jesus number one person at a time, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Like, we want him to be in that first seat, the first position.
And none of us is perfectly there. And so that's the thing, like with this story, the conversations that I've had, and I know you did too, leading, like I wrote this message nearly a month ago. And so the conversations that I had around this passage were probably almost 2 months ago. And one of the reasons I chose this passage was because of a conversation that I had with one of our members around this passage. And they were asking about, like, what was Jesus getting at with this? And I think we're often very quick to rationalize what is going on here so that we can take ourselves off the hook. Oh, yeah, no, Jesus wasn't really talking about, like, you don't really have to sell everything you have to give it to the poor in order to follow Jesus. Obviously, he's just this is a one-off. I'm talking to this one guy about this thing. And that's why I brought up those other passages where it was fairly common, at least when Jesus was physically here, to have to leave everything in order to follow Jesus. And Jesus does say, like, you have to deny yourself and take up your cross and follow me. And if you're trying to hang on to your life, you're going to lose it. So, like, there is a demand in following Jesus. And we talk a lot about the grace and love, which is true, but there is a
sacrifice and
there
a
is
surrender.
A sacrifice that is involved in pursuing Jesus.
Yeah, it's tough because, like, with that story, the rich young ruler doesn't have a name on purpose.
Yeah.
And I think it's because we're supposed to identify as that person.
Yeah.
Like, that's me.
Yeah.
And when I read that, I have to evaluate my life and say, like, what am I walking away sad with? Like, this area and this area and that area. And Jesus is saying, this is what it looks like to walk within my kingdom. Are you ready to embrace this new way of life?
Yeah.
And I think there are areas in my life that I'm sad, and I have to wrestle with that.
Yeah.
And that's purposeful.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I ask myself, like, okay, so how am I living my life in a way that doesn't mesh with God's kingdom? And to evaluate that and to work through that and to grow and develop that.
Yeah.
And that's what that apprenticeship with Jesus looks like.
Yeah.
And I think with the rich young ruler in that situation, Jesus is saying, this is what my kingdom's all about. And the guy walked away sad saying, like, man, that's such a different kingdom than the one I'm living in. I can't mesh with that. I can't rationalize the way that I want to live my life in this radical new way of living. So he's like, this makes no sense to me. And he walked away sad. And like, I picture that like sad and frustrated and confused and perplexed and all those things. And I think there's so many areas in my life where I wrestle with it. I read what Jesus' kingdom looks like, and I'm like, oh man, yeah, I'm working on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where that grace and the understanding comes in, but also that apprenticeship and that being a student.
Yeah.
If I'm not growing in that, if I'm not moving towards that, there's that like that heart check and that issue that's like, I have to resolve. I have to find a way of working through this, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
So I was talking with somebody about that same passage, and I read that, and it is like humbling to my core.
Yep.
That one and the other one in Matthew where he's like with the goats and the sheep. Like, oh man, yeah. Am I just claiming to do things in the name of Jesus? And like at the end, Jesus is like, I don't even know who you are. Like, oh man, that is humbling, and I think purposefully so.
Yeah.
So that we have to evaluate like what's happening in my life. So when I read that passage, like I often like can point my finger and like look at all these other things happening in America. Like, oh no, that's Doug Vance right there.
Yeah.
And I got to deal with that.
Yeah.
So man, it's so good, but so humbling at the same time.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So our big idea yesterday was less stuff gives me more room to love others. So how have you guys seen that truth in that principle play out? Like in your own life or in others' lives?
Yeah, I mean, in so many ways, really. That's true with our stuff, but I alluded to this. We'll get to this week, but it's also true with our time. You know, if my calendar is overstuffed, I don't have time to love others. Like literally, don't have time. And so, scaling back even our activity levels, as well as scaling back, physical possessions, it does create margin and space. And I mean, that's true with. I think about just families, my dad was a very absent figure in our home. And it was because his schedule was so full. It was so full that he didn't have capacity to love his kids in the way that he probably even wanted to. His expression of love was provision, not time.
Yeah.
And because he didn't have time. And so I think, all of us can relate to those kinds of things, but that's just an example in my own life.
Yeah. A recent-ish example for us would be getting rid of some stuff and how that changed from our two kids. So there's like things that you do keep in case you have another kid and all that, but there's also things that you so after Easton was born, we tried to sell a lot of stuff. Like we needed some money, and that was our first instinct. Oh, we don't need this anymore. Let's sell it. Let's put it on Marketplace. After Nora was born, like it just felt so different. Even that small example, like, hey, we need to make space in here. We can get rid of all these things. Yeah, who is having a baby around us that we know?
Yeah.
And to just be, we don't want anything. Just bless. You get the same blessing that we had. Like it just felt so much different.
Yeah.
That's cool. So I asked permission to share this story,
Okay.
but he asked to keep it anonymous.
Okay.
So an anonymous friend of mine, we went to a conference for Next Gen a handful of years ago. And one day after the conference was over, we all went out and grabbed dinner together. And he has some dietary things, so the dinner ended up not working for him, so he just saved his money. I think he actually said like, hey, it's okay, I just won't eat and I'll fast. It's a chance to pray, this will be good. And we're all like, oh, this is a bummer, what in the world? And he was like, this is okay. So we ate, he did not eat. Afterwards, we were driving back to the place, we swung by the local like food line, I think we were grabbing some food or something maybe for him. And as we're out front of the food line, a lady walks up to his side of the truck and he's driving, and she knocks on the window and he rolls the window down, and she clearly is in need of help. She's a little bit older. She has like a book bag and looks like she's carrying all of her stuff with her. So probably homeless or just really in need of assistance, right? And he rolls the window down and she's like, if you can help at all, just anything would be a huge benefit. And he took the money that he saved because he did not eat dinner that night and gave it to her. And it was just like an instant response. There was no need to call home and say like, is this budget, is it going to work? Can I do this or whatever? He just gave her money. And she started crying, and I started crying, and I think other people in the truck. I don't want to put this on everybody, but I feel like everybody's crying, right? It was such a cool moment. And she walked away and walked into Food Line. And it was cool. And afterwards he said, like, this is amazing, because he was reading in a book recently before that where somebody was talking about when you fast or when you go without, you sacrifice. Don't do it just so that you can have more, but do it so that you can give it away. And the guy was talking about fasting from a meal, but holding onto that money so that you can bless somebody else. And this good friend of mine said, that's literally what just happened.
Right.
And for me, it was so amazing
cool
to see the progression of this, of fasting from a meal that was unexpected so that immediately he could bless somebody else. And it's such an amazing example of like less is more, so that you can open-handedly just give to somebody who's in need without even thinking about it. So like I think about that regularly. And usually if I see somebody that looks like they're a little bit down on their luck and things are going on in their life and financially unstable, I go back to that moment and I have to ask myself, like, where am I sacrificing so that I can give?
Right.
And if I don't have a clear answer to that, that's that heart check again, where what can I do to have less so that I cannot just hoard and keep it all to myself, but so that I can give to somebody else in need, like in the moment, right? Like instant obedience, blessing somebody else. It was
Have you
powerful.
blessed somebody else with gas yet?
Oh,
Remember
no,
that?
not with gas, but I did take that money and I was able to like do a meal kind of
Nice,
thing.
perfect.
So
Okay.
I felt bad it wasn't a true one-to-one like gas situation, but it was like it was at a gas station. So I guess that counts.
That does count.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody blessed Doug when he was in need of cash only because the power knocked out the gas pump stuff.
It's a very long
no.
story.
Yeah, it is a long story, but you were to return the favor. That's what you wanted to do, and you did. Good.
It was like a pay it
Awesome.
forward kind of thing. It
Yep.
was very
That's
cool.
awesome.
Yeah.
Jamie, can you read us the quote from Basil of Caesarea?
Yes.
Caesarea?
Oh,
Saint Basil the Great.
Yes.
That's a cool name, by the
that's
way.
a
What a
cool
great name.
That's
So
like my
good.
weatherman name.
Basil store.
Basil store.
He said, and it was very cool that I've been wanting to use a couple of these things from Bullies and Saints for a while, so it was fun to be able to finally
Oh, yeah.
work it into
There's
a
a lot of
message.
quotes happening here. This book has been so
many great
powerful.
quotes. This was Saint Basil the Great teaching on this very passage, which I think is just super interesting. He said, "The bread that you hold back belongs to the hungry. The coat that you guard in a chest belongs to the naked. The shoes that you have left wasting away belong to the shoeless. The silver that you have buried in the ground belongs to the needy. In these and other ways you have wronged all those who you were able to provide for."
So, guys, do you agree with Basil's statement that by withholding from those in need, we are actually stealing from them?
Yeah, so I think we could do the same thing with Basil as we do with Jesus. And we can very quickly just say, "Oh yeah, no,
No, he didn't
that's
mean
not
that.
that's
Right.
not what he means really," or that's not really true. That's not what Jesus was getting at really. To let ourselves off the hook,
Right.
in the chapter around this quote of Saint Basil the Great, John Dixon talks about other positions that the early church had in regards to poverty, and it's super, super interesting. So I jotted down just a couple of these. And what's interesting to me about these quotes or these practices, is they're closer in proximity to the person of Jesus than we are today.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of like that game where you whisper in someone's ear, and by the time it gets to
Telephone
the
game.
end, it gets all jacked up. Well, this is still pretty early in the ear whispering thing, so it's probably closer to what it is than where we are, right? So, what Basil said there was actually a pretty common position in the early church. So, in the 11th and 12th centuries, there was church law in place and they actually ran kind of parallel to civil law. So the church was able to sentence people to jail or whatever because they had that type of authority. So there was this dual track justice system going on: church justice, social justice. And medieval church lawyers insisted that the poor had genuine rights. And one of the laws said, "Whatever you have beyond what suffices for your needs belongs to others." That was a law.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
This is another quote from the law. A man who keeps for himself more than he needs is guilty of theft. There were even cases where the poor took the property of another and they were not found guilty of any crime because it was determined that he was not stealing what belonged to another. He was only taking what belonged to himself because the person he took it from had excess. There were also cases of the poor taking a rich person to court, and the courts could compel the wealthy person to be more generous, or they would threaten them with excommunication, which gets a little further away from the heart of Jesus.
Yeah.
But it does go to show, like, just the justice component of it. All that to say, like, I may not agree necessarily with all of those positions, but they could be closer to what Jesus was getting at than we care to admit.
Yep.
And so, do I agree 100% with what Basil said? Maybe not 100%, but I do think, like, to go back to your, your conversation with Nate, to try to explain a storage unit to someone in a
Right.
third world country. There is some kind of injustice when there is so much wealth available to some and not to others. And I know, call me the communist and all the
political,
the political
thing
climate
that comes in,
doesn't allow for us to even speak
to
those
talk
words.
about it. Right.
But there's something unjust, and you talked about the Matthew 25 passage
Right.
of the, you fed the poor, you gave water to the thirsty, you gave clothing to the naked, you gave shelter to the homeless, or you didn't do those things. That seems to be the heart of Jesus, that if you have, and there is someone who has not, that those who have are responsible for those who have not.
Right.
And we will be held accountable for that. And I know that's politically, that's completely unpopular. But let's take it out of the realm of politics. If people of faith weren't being compelled by Uncle Sam to do these things,
Right.
but we were motivated by the love of Jesus to do those kinds of things, how different would our country look? How different would our world look if people of faith actually started practicing some of these ideas? It could...
And how much more compelling is Christ than a political figure then?
Well, for sure.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm opposed to the politics side of that. Like, I
Right.
don't think it is the government's place to
Right.
take from one to give to another. But I do think it's a person of faith place to give generously to causes and needs that they are capable of meeting or should be capable of meeting.
Right.
Yeah, I think that statement is, it's radical, but it's convicting at the same time. It's been convicting me since I heard it. Yeah. I do have stuff. We have stuff piled under the bed and all this stuff we don't wear, we don't use anymore. And so we have a good example that we're going to talk about in a minute. But I also think, like, there's a side of this that as members of the staff here at the church, one of our jobs is to equip our members and equip our volunteers and stuff. And, like, besides the goodwill, there's just, like, not many opportunities. Like, okay, now I packed it all up. What do I do with it? So now I'm thinking of the first question we got to ask: what did it look like if our whole church tied 10%? That is even more equipping that we can do to then, yes, now I have packed up all my stuff. What do I do with it? Well, now we have all these different causes, all these local partners, all this, just bring them on over here and we'll go over there together.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first thing it made me think of too is like the stuff that we do have. Like, I should be a better steward of the stuff I have and taking care of it. So if I had like 2 pairs of shoes, I'm not going to like destroy the pair of shoes because I know they don't belong to me if they belong to somebody else.
Yeah.
So I'm going to like take better care of the stuff that I do have, knowing that eventually like this could go bless somebody. Yeah. And I think so often, like for us, like we kind of run our cars into the ground and my shoes like are like falling apart and stuff like that. But just that mindset, everything I own is not my own. Hey, that's like a sticky idea there.
Yeah.
Everything I own is not my own.
Yeah.
I'll write that down, use that later. Right? But yeah, like we're going to be better stewards of the stuff that we do have so that when we can like bless somebody else, it's like it's as if it's new and it's like not some beat up, falling apart, whatever it could be.
Well, your sticky statement there, everything I own is not my own, is solidly biblical. That everything we have comes to us from the hand of the Father himself. So if it's his and not mine, then when I see others in need, it's easier to give away what's not mine.
Yeah.
It's his. So I'm not actually sacrificing. I'm just sharing what was shared with me.
Yeah. Have you ever driven somebody else's car and the first thing they say is like, watch out, the driver's side door doesn't open, or watch out, the blinker doesn't work. And there's all these like stipulations, like the things that I own, would I feel comfortable giving it to somebody else? Or would it be like, you need a car, here's my car, but watch out, the brakes don't work.
Right.
So there's like a whole other level of that, like good maintenance and taking care of what we do have so that we actually can bless somebody else. And there's a whole other level that I just typically don't think about in that.
Joe, you mentioned the locker illustration a little bit ago, but Jamie, you brought this locker wardrobe thing on stage yesterday that was just stuffed
Crammed
to the gills.
Right.
And then you had a backpack that kind of symbolized like a burden of a neighbor, and that, if they brought that over to you and asked for you to like help with this thing, they
even
needed
if your
to
heart was you
put
wanted
it somewhere and you took it. Like you just you didn't have the space to put it anywhere. And that was such a powerful image, I thought, and illustration. So the whole idea of that was to just help us think about like, how can we unload some of our stuff? Like how can we like just look at our lives and practically think about what do we need to get rid of, so that when a neighbor, when a family member, when somebody says, I need help with some of my stuff, that we can say, yeah, I've got room for that.
Right.
Bring it on over. So you mentioned a couple of things. So I would just like to talk about them real quick. So the free market, this is something really exciting because we usually do this in the spring. But as our team was like brainstorming through this Less is More series, this is one of the ideas that came up. We were like, let's do a free market this fall. So Joey, maybe you can just tell us a little bit about it because you're kind of helping get this thing off the ground with your team. Just tell us what we can expect and how we can be involved.
Yep. So first things first, just because, this is, I'm gathering up a bunch of stuff and giving away for free. Don't make no mistake. There's still some work involved. So gear up. Get your stuff, like go through it, find the gently used items, separate the trash, and then pile it up, have it ready to go, and bring it on October 19th to Cherry Middle School. So we are a church about the community. There's no mistake about that. You only need to come one Sunday to know this. And so we have now kind of challenged ourselves in the area of church-wide events like our Fall Fest or different events we put on for families. And so we're extremely excited to partner with Cherry Middle School, and Rochelle led that effort. And so we'll be over there during their fall festival, right in the middle of that.
Yeah.
So however many people even attend their normal fall festival are already there.
Yeah.
We will be promoting our free market, so those people will be coming. So like we've already ramped up the amount of free snacks and stuff that we're planning and all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's gonna be fun.
It's gonna be awesome.
Yep.
So that people can get signed up through our app and website,
They
right?
can, yep.
As vendors.
Yep,
And
it's live.
it'll run a lot like our one that we usually have on site here at the hub. So they'll have to be their vendor. They'll have to bring their stuff, stay with their stuff.
Yep.
No one's marketing your stuff. You're going to stay with your stuff.
Yeah, and when we're here at the building holding the free market, if you're signing up to be a vendor and you've already done it in the past, I just want to let you know, like we have tables here, but we're not bringing the tables over there. There's an event that Saturday, all that. So if you want a table, feel free to bring a table. If not, a blanket or just use your trunk or something like that. It's not going to be too big of a deal.
It's going to be great.
Yes, it is.
So we're really excited about that. And then the other thing was a 30-day no spending challenge.
Yeah, Joe was very sad about this challenge.
I know.
I saw
Joe,
it in
in
run-through.
rehearsal, Joe was like,
Thanks
I'm
a
going to
lot.
be getting elbowed during this thing.
So did you get banned from going out to
Yeah, like
lunch
my
for
wife's
30 days?
her eyes lit up
Yeah.
when that part of the message came up. Oh, that
Joey's
sounds great.
Joey's
30
packing
no
a lunch
spending.
for 30 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Hasn't officially started yet. Y'all want to get lunch today?
When is the kickoff date of this?
There's leftover mo's today.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So Jamie, just tell us what that
Yeah,
what you
so, I mean,
envision
it's-
that as,
yeah.
or
You know, if you're struggling with your stuff, that's really what these two ideas are all about, is like trying to get a little momentum in the direction of, I want to let go of my stuff. And for some people, they habitually purchase, and they're purchasing things that they don't need. And it's leading to indebtedness. It's leading to having less margin. Their budget's out of control. And so, like, this is just a tool to try to, like, put the brakes on your spending and help you to realize that you can actually go 30 days without buying something that you don't have to have.
Yeah.
So that it's not don't spend for 30 days. It's don't spend anything outside of necessary for 30 days.
Yeah.
Whether that's, going out to eat for lunch at work, or whether you're just like obsessively buying on Amazon, or, even if you're not spending a lot of money. Maybe I know a handful of folks who love going to the consignment shops and, but they're constantly buying. What if you don't need to do that? And what if those resources could be used in different ways? And just hitting pause on your spending for 30 days can help you to catch a breath and get some perspective. And that's really what the hope of.
It can also help you create a habit, right?
Yeah,
Like that's
for
the
sure.
point of like a nice little 30-day window
Yep.
to create
Yep.
a good habit.
yeah, so good.
I was talking with somebody once that they were trying to build in better accountability with like reckless spending, and they said they put their credit card in a block of ice, and what they would do is if they wanted to buy something, they had to wait for the ice to fall. So by the time they could get their card, if they still wanted it, then they would get it. But usually by the time the ice thawed, they were like, I don't need this anymore. So for this, like, what if we just like put our credit cards on the block of ice for an entire month?
That's a unique way to sleep on it.
Yeah. And like, I think the visual representation of that is so very funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for me, it's just like removing my credit card from my like online autofill, where you like log into Amazon and it's so
Right.
easy.
Yeah. So quick.
Hit one button and you don't have
Yeah.
to think about it. So
true.
all of this is like spending apps and Amazon and like even like monthly subscription services to go through there and to find out which ones do I not need. Oh, all of them. Okay, cool.
Right.
Yeah.
But it is a good idea, like taking your credit card information out of all of the autofill things, because you're right. Like the credit card on the block of ice is meaningless for most people now,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you don't even ever have to look at your credit card to
Right.
use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good. Lots of great insights today, guys. Thank you so much. That's all we've got time for, but we hope that you'll join us this Sunday on campus at 9 or 10:45 as we continue our Less is More series. We're going to be talking about less hurry, more rest.
Yes.
Who doesn't want that? When you said that on Sunday from stage, there
Yes.
was a collective like,
Yeah, we need it.
yeah, everybody wants that. So invite someone to sit with you this week. And if you can't be here on campus, we hope you'll join us right here on YouTube at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And we will see you next Sunday. Thanks for being here, friends. Go be love.